The Volcari quartermaster had perfected the bureaucratic art of saying no. His chitinous plating gleamed under sterile depot lighting as four compound eyes tracked Lieutenant Maya Cross with the suspicion reserved for unexploded ordnance. Requisition Form T47. Alpha, he stated, sliding a datapad across the counter. Equipment replacement requires authorization from your direct supervisor, your supervisor's supervisor, and notarized coalition medical certification regarding species-appropriate tool usage. Maya stared at the datapad like it had personally insulted her ancestors. Scorch marks decorated her left shoulder. Her boots held together with wire and optimism. She'd just extracted 3 coalition scientists from a crevassy war zone, losing her gear when enemy artillery decided the landing zone needed redecorating. I had equipment, she said with pointed patience. It vaporized during extraction. I need a replacement kit. Standard loadout. 6 to 8 rotation cycles, the quartermaster replied without looking up. She doesn't have 6 to 8 cycles. Commander Varric materialized beside Maya tall. Bronze-scaled Corvethi with exhaustion etched into every feature. 3 stellar clusters of combat experience. 2 months managing human operatives. The latter had aged him more. Mission window opens in 32 hours. The quartermaster's mandibles clicked dismissively. Then perhaps she should have been more careful with initially issued equipment. Maya's expression didn't change, but Varric had learned to read human micro-expressions. That particular stillness meant someone was doing complex mental arithmetic involving the quartermaster. S-thorax and the transparisteel barrier's structural integrity. The equipment performed exactly as specified, Maya said with dangerous calm. It absorbed directed energy fire, thereby preventing said fire from ventilating my internal organs. I'd say that's optimal performance. Nonetheless, look, Varric interrupted, leaning against the counter with weary authority. Humans have unique operational requirements. They need supervision, the quartermaster cut in, finally making eye contact. Coalition Directive 847 clearly states primitive species. Transitioning to stellar operations require proper oversight. Humans have been space-capable for what? 2 centuries? Barely probationary. He gestured at Maya with 2 manipulators simultaneously, the Volcari equivalent of amused pity. No offense intended. Oh, none taken, Maya replied in a tone suggesting significant offense had been catalogued for future reference. Varric's tail twitched. The Corvethi migraine response. She's completed 47 missions with 96% success. She doesn't need supervision. She needs a plasma cutter and demolition. Charges, which she receive after proper authorization. The quartermaster returned to his terminal with the finality of someone defending their particular hill to the death. We can't have operatives of limited technological backgrounds improvising with advanced systems. Maya glanced around the waiting area. Standard coalition construction efficient, sterile, designed for species ranging from delicate Sessic to 300-kilogram Cromoth, who forgot their own strength. The floor plating, she noted with casual observation that made Varric nervous, was titanium composite. Grade 7. Tensile strength approximately 900 megapascals. Melting point around 1600 Celsius. Useful information. How long to process paperwork? She asked. The quartermaster consulted his terminal. 4 rotation cycles minimum. Can I wait here while you start processing? His mandibles clicked in confusion. I suppose there's no regulation against waiting. Excellent. Maya smiled with exactly 0% warmth. I'll just need 5 minutes. 5 minutes for what? Varric asked, not entirely sure he wanted the answer. Administrative patience. Maya moved toward the seating area with purposeful stride. Varric watched her examine the floor plating with focused intensity. and felt the distinct sensation he was about to have. Significantly more paperwork. The kind that started with incident report and ended with, how was I supposed to know humans could do that? He really should have requested a transfer to Sussex diplomatic course. The maintenance corridor had become unexpectedly crowded for a Tuesday, or whatever the station called third rotation cycle. Nobody could quite explain how they'd all arrived, clustered around the security feed like scavengers around interesting carrion. Is she praying? Asked Junior Technician Riloth, a young Sussex whose translucent wings fluttered nervously. Humans don't pray before paperwork, muttered Krev, a Cromath dock supervisor who'd worked enough human freight crews to know better. They curse extensively, sometimes inventing new languages specifically for the occasion. On the monitor, Maya knelt beside a floor plate, running fingers along its edges with careful attention, someone reading Braille or diffusing ordnance. She's examining weld points, observed Dr. Tyven. The station's xenanthropologist who'd abandoned lunch the moment someone mentioned a human doing something unusual, which happened approximately twice per rotation. See how she's testing compression seals? Why would she? Riloth began. Maya's palm struck the floor plate. Precisely. The sound echoed through a UDIO pickup-specific frequency that made several observers wince. Resonance test, Krev said slowly. She's checking material composition. From hitting it? Riloth sounded skeptical. Humans have excellent pattern recognition for physical properties, Dr. Tyven murmured. Recorder active. Their evolutionary environment required constant material assessment. Predator or prey, edible or toxic, useful or worthless. She leaned closer. Though this seems more sophisticated than identifying poisonous berries. Maya produced a small multi-tool from her remaining Gear Standard issue. Nothing remarkable. She wedged it into the seam between plates and applied leverage with smooth. Practice motion. The seal cracked, not broke. Cracked. There was a difference. That plating's reinforced, Krev said, massive frame shifting uncomfortably. Designed to support my people. She shouldn't be able. Maya braced her feet, gripped the plate's edge, and pulled. Muscles stood out along forearms. Her jaw set with determined focus usually reserved for religious experiences or challenging mathematics. The plate shifted millimeter by millimeter. Composite material separating from housing with metallic shriek of something experiencing unexpected forces. Impossible, Riloth whispered. The structural integrity alone. Humans have disproportionate strength for their size. Dr. Tyven interrupted, still recording. Particularly upper body. Something about persistence hunting and throwing weapons in their developmental history. She paused. Though I'll admit this is impressive, even by their standards. The plate came free. Maya set it down with surprising gentleness, then sat cross-legged beside it like a sculptor considering marble. She ran hands across the surface again, fingers mapping something invisible to observers. What's she doing now? Riloth asked. Nobody had an answer. Maya placed both palms flat against composite material and began to rub. Back and forth, applying pressure, movements building rhythm. Friction generated heat. Basic thermodynamics. Children learned in primary education, except children didn't typically apply it to industrial flooring. She's generating thermal expansion, Krev breathed. At molecular level to make material malleable. That would require temperatures exceeding. Human skin can withstand significant heat, Dr. Tyven said. Their homeworld experiences extreme temperature variations. They evolved remarkable thermal regulation. She watched Maya work, fascinated. But using friction heating to manipulate composite alloys, that's not instinct. That's applied knowledge. Maya shifted grip, found a stress point in now warmed material, and twisted. The composite began to deform slowly, reluctantly, but deform. She worked it like clay, like dough. Like something that had forgotten it was supposed to be rigid structural component. Her fingers pressed channels, created angles, defined edges with patient determination of someone who'd done this before. Not with floor plating, perhaps, but with something. How long has it been? Krev asked. Riloth checked the chronometer. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. On screen, Maya stood holding what was no longer a floor plate. The composite had been shaped, folded, compressed into something approximately 30 centimeters long with defined handle and tapered edge that caught overhead lighting uncomfortably. Is that? Riloth started. A blade, Krev finished. She made a blade from the floor in less than 4 minutes. Dr. Tyvan's recorder worked overtime. The balance looks perfect. See how she's testing weight distribution? She's created a functional weapon using nothing but manual manipulation and basic thermal physics. That's not possible, Riloth insisted. The quartermaster was right. Humans need oversight. They can't just. The waiting area door opened. The Volcari quartermaster entered, datapad in hand. Mandibles already clicking with bureaucratic satisfaction. He froze. 4 eyes processed the scene. Waiting area -1 floor plate. Humans standing calmly holding approximately 2 kilograms of shaped titanium composite that looked distressingly similar to implements designed for separating living beings from continued existence. Your forms are ready for initial processing, the quartermaster managed. Voice pitched with competing emotions fighting for dominance. Maya examined her improvised blade with critical eye of a craftswoman evaluating work. Thanks. I appreciate your efficiency. She looked up, meeting his stare with perfect calm. I got bored waiting. In the maintenance corridor, Krev began laughing, deep rumbling sound that rattled the security terminal. 5 minutes, he said. 5 minutes. I need to file an incident report, Riloth said weakly. I need to publish a paper, Dr. Tyvan corrected. Already composing abstracts. On the monitor, Varak had appeared in the waiting area, taking in the scene with resigned expression of someone whose worst expectations had been thoroughly met. He looked at Maya, at the blade, at the empty space where regulation-compliant plating used to be. How did you know the composition would work? He asked. Maya shrugged. Educated guess. Coalition standard construction uses grade 7 titanium composite for weight-bearing surfaces. Alloy responds well to controlled thermal manipulation. I've worked with similar materials before. Varak repeated the word like a curse. Before? Before starships. Before coalition technology. Maya paused. Before breakfast, usually. You want to confiscate this? Because I should warn you, the quartermaster. S-Desk is also made of potentially useful materials. The quartermaster made a sound that didn't translate into any known language, but conveyed profound administrative distress. Security Officer Draven's office hadn't been designed for this many people. Then again, it hadn't been designed for situations where operatives converted architectural features into armaments during routine administrative processes. Draven, a hulking Corvetti with ceremonial scars and deeply unfortunate assignment rotations, stood with arms crossed, projecting authority. Dr. Tyvan perched on a filing unit, recorder active, looking like someone attending the galaxy's most interesting lecture. The quartermaster occupied his desk chair with defeated posture of someone reconsidering career choices. Varak leaned against the wall, wondering if interspecies liaison work qualified him for hazard pay. Maya sat in the visitor's chair, still holding the blade, looking like she was waiting for a dental appointment. Walk me through it, Draven said, voice carrying particular tone of someone who already hated the answer he was about to receive. Step by step. How does someone without tools create a functional weapon from structural plating? I had a tool, Maya corrected. tapping the multi-tool clipped to her belt. Standard issue. Your quartermaster probably has 6 of them in supply. That's for opening containers, the quartermaster interjected. Not structural demolition. Funny how tools work for multiple purposes once you stop thinking of them as single-function objects. Maya shifted in her chair, blade resting across knees. The multi-tool provided leverage for initial separation. After that, it's just understanding material properties and applying appropriate force. Dr. Tyven leaned forward, fascinated. But the thermal manipulation generating sufficient heat through friction to make titanium composite. Malleable requires temperatures that would damage most species. Manipulators. Most species didn't evolve on a planet where touching the wrong surface could cook you or freeze you, depending on the season, Maya replied. Human skin has remarkable thermal tolerance. We sweat for cooling, shiver for warmth, and our pain receptors are calibrated for survival, not comfort. Yeah, it hurt. But hurt and harm aren't the same thing. You're saying your species evolved to casually withstand temperatures that would incapacitate. I'm saying we evolved to not die immediately when temperatures got inconvenient, Maya interrupted. Which on Earth was most of the time. You adapt or you don't propagate. Basic selection pressure. Marek watched the xenanthropologist's expression cycle through fascination, horror, and professional jealousy. Please tell me you're recording this, he muttered. Every word, Dr. Tyven confirmed. Continue the shaping process. Maya held up the blade, tilting it so overhead lights played across the edge. Once material reached optimal malleability, it's about recognizing stress points and grain structure. Metals have patterns. You learn to read them, where they'll fold, where they'll resist, how to encourage the shape you want rather than forcing it. You learned this in military training? Draven asked. I learned the principles in primary education. Metallurgy basics. Pottery class, actually understanding how materials respond to pressure and heat. Then metal shop. Then field training built on everything else. She paused. Though my grandmother taught me the real fundamentals with bread dough when I was 6. Same concept, different medium. The office fell silent except for environmental. Systems hum and quiet were of Dr. Tyven's. Recorder. Bread dough, the quartermaster repeated flatly. Gluten. Development requires understanding protein structures, hydration ratios, and how mechanical action creates specific results. Maya explained with patience of someone who'd had this conversation before, possibly with other confused aliens. You manipulate material until it does what you need. Whether that's rise properly or become a structural blade is really just a question of desired outcome and available resources. She's describing adaptive problem solving, Dr. Tyven said. More to herself than anyone else. Most species develop tool use through biological specialization like Valkyrie manipulator precision or through inherited technological frameworks. We receive knowledge systems and operate within them. She looked at Maya with something approaching awe. Humans develop by identifying problems and creating solutions from whatever existed nearby. We call it making do, Maya offered. Though I've heard it described as cursed ingenuity, and why are they like this? Depending on who's watching. Your species mastered metallurgy before achieving spaceflight, Varric added. While most coalition members were still in arboreal stages or aquatic development, humans were smelting ore and forging tools. We were cold, hungry, and everything on our planet wanted to eat us, Maya said with a shrug. Motivation is a remarkable accelerator. Draven picked up the blade, testing its weight with professional appreciation that clearly conflicted with his official disapproval. This is combat-grade quality. Proper edge alignment, balanced center of gravity, ergonomic grip formation. He looked at Maya. You've made weapons before. Everyone's made weapons before, Maya replied. It's one of humanity's core competencies. Give us enough time and literally any object, and we'll figure out how to make it dangerous. That's not reassuring, the quartermaster muttered. It wasn't meant to be reassuring. It was meant to be accurate. Maya leaned back, crossing her arms. Look, you wanted to know how I did it. I told you. Pattern recognition, material science, applied force, thermal manipulation, and basic understanding that everything is potentially useful if you think about it correctly, and complete disregard for standard safety protocols regarding structural modification. Draven added, the floor's structural integrity is fine. I removed one plate from a grid designed with triple redundancy. This station could lose 20 plates in that section before experiencing compromise. Maya met his stare. I checked the load distribution calculations before I started. You calculated load distribution, the quartermaster said slowly, while waiting for paperwork. I got bored easily as a child. Developed lots of interesting habits. Dr. Tyven was practically vibrating with academic excitement. Commander Varric, you mentioned humans were doing this with rocks before stellar capability? Before fire, actually, Varric confirmed. Flint knapping shaping stone through percussion fracturing to create cutting implements. They've been turning environmental features into tools for roughly 3 million years. Give or take a few hundred millennia. 3 million? Riloth, who'd been quietly observing from the doorway, sounded faint. Most species achieve stellar capacity within 50,000 years of developing abstract thought. Most species had biological advantages, Maya said. Claws, armor plating, venom, natural weapons. Humans had weak jaws, no claws, fragile skin, and we weren't even particularly fast. She smiled without humor. So we picked up rocks and started hitting things until the things stopped being problems. Then we got better rocks. Then we figured out how to make rocks sharper. Then we discovered metal. Then we discovered everything else. Escalation as evolutionary strategy, Dr. Tyven murmured. Still recording. Draven set the blade on the quartermaster's desk with solid thunk that made everyone except Maya flinch. This is an unauthorized weapon created from coalition property. I should confiscate it and file charges for vandalism and potential safety violations. You could try, Maya agreed pleasantly. Though I should mention the desk is made from compressed polymer composite. Lower melting point than titanium. Easier to work with. Honestly, I could probably make something functional in 3 minutes instead of 4. The quartermaster made a strangled sound and placed both manipulators protectively on his desk surface. She's not joking, Varric said tiredly. For the record, she's never joking about things like this. Draven stared at the human, at the blade, at his own equipment belt with its various regulation tools that suddenly seemed far less permanent than previously assumed. What did humans do before they had metal? Maya's smile widened fractionally. You really don't want that answer. I really do, Dr. Tyven interjected. Bone. Stone, wood, obsidian, teeth, antlers, shells. Plant fibers, animal sinew, ardent leather. And creative applications of fire. Maya ticked items off on her fingers. Also improvised chemical weapons from plant toxins. Strategic use of environmental hazards, and occasionally just our own skeletal structure as bludgeoning instruments. Humans have killed predators by choking them with our own arms while being eaten. We're not proud of it, but we're also not extinct. So there's that. The office fell silent again. I'm writing a very strongly worded incident report. The quartermaster finally managed. I'm writing 17 research papers. Dr. Tyven countered. I'm requesting a transfer. Draven muttered. Varric's communicator chimed. He read the message, expression shifting through several emotions before settling on resigned inevitability. Command wants a full briefing. Apparently, this isn't an isolated incident. There are more humans making weapons from architecture? The quartermaster asked weakly. There are more humans improvising solutions that violate everything we thought we understood about equipment dependency. Varric corrected. He looked at Maya. What exactly do you people need to function operationally? Maya considered the question with genuine thoughtfulness. Objectives, information, time. She paused. Everything else is just details. Coalition Tactical Command occupied 3 levels of the station's central hub, where strategic decisions were made by people paid to think about worst-case scenarios, which meant they were already having a bad day before the reports started arriving. Admiral Kethrian, a Volcari with enough combat ribbons to qualify as light armor, scrolled through incident files with mounting dread of someone watching structural failure in slow motion. Beside him, strategic analyst Ven, a Sessic whose wings had long since lost their youthful translucence, compiled data with grim efficiency of an actuary calculating mortality rates. 17 incidents, Ven reported, voice carrying flat affect of someone in denial, across 9 operational theaters in the past lunar cycle alone. Define incidents, Kethrian said, though he suspected he already knew. Human operatives achieving mission parameters without issued equipment. Ven pulled up holographic display that made both of them wince. Agent Nomad fabricated a functional communications relay from salvaged wiring, and what he described as rocks with interesting conductive properties. Operative Cypher bypassed a security system using a makeshift electromagnetic pulse device constructed from. She paused, checking notes. A medical scanner, mess hall utensils, and creative disregard for manufacturer warranties. They're breaking our equipment to make different equipment, Kethrian observed. They're treating our equipment as raw materials, Ven corrected. The difference is philosophically significant. More files appeared. Each one documented humans accomplishing objectives through methods ranging from creative to borderline hallucinatory. A pattern emerged, unwelcome and undeniable. They don't see tools the way we do, Kethrian said slowly, understanding crystallizing like ice in vacuum. We see a plasma cutter as a plasma cutter. Fixed function, specific application. Humans see stored energy and focused emission capabilities, Ven finished, which could be a welding tool, a weapon, a power source. Or apparently, she consulted another file, an improvised propulsion system, if you're desperate enough and understand thermodynamics. How long have we been issuing them standard loadouts? Since integration. 73 years. Ven's wings fluttered with agitation. We designed equipment protocols for species that needed specific tools for specific tasks. Valkyrie require precision instruments. Crommeth need reinforced structures. Sessic use lightweight aerodynamic configurations. She gestured at the files. Humans apparently need problems in proximity to literally anything. Kethrian leaned back, mandibles clicking in thought. We've been handicapping them. We've been helping them, Ven protested. Equipment standardization ensures operational efficiency across. We've been handicapping them, Kethrian repeated with conviction. Look at the success rates. Missions where humans lost their gear show higher completion percentages than missions where they maintained full loadouts. The data confirmed it. Humans stripped of equipment adapted faster, improvised better, and achieved objectives through routes that tactical planning software couldn't predict because tactical planning software assumed operatives needed tools to function. They're more dangerous without our help, Ven said quietly. They're more effective being themselves, Kethrian corrected. We recruited them because they think differently. Then we spent 7 decades trying to make them think like us. He pulled up deployment records comparing human operational patterns against other species. The divergence was stark. Every other coalition member escalates through technology. Better weapons, better armor, better systems. Humans escalate through creativity. Command won't approve eliminating equipment protocols, when warned. The logistical framework depends on. Command will approve whatever. Keeps humans functional in the field. Catherine began drafting orders with decisive speed of someone who'd made an uncomfortable discovery and refused to waste time mourning comfortable ignorance. New operational guidelines. Human operatives receive mission parameters, environmental data, and objective specifications. No equipment manifests. No required loadouts. You're sending them into hostile territory empty-handed? I'm sending them into hostile territory without assumptions about what constitutes hands. Catherine transmitted the orders before second thoughts could interfere. Let them determine their own resource requirements. Varek received the transmission 3 hours later. Read it twice to confirm he wasn't hallucinating. Then forwarded it to Maya with a message that consisted entirely of, "Command has lost their minds." Thoughts? Maya read the new protocols in her quarters. Bare walls, minimal furnishings. Everything positioned for easy conversion into something else, if circumstances required. The blade she'd made sat on her desk. Reminder that regulations and reality didn't always align. Mission parameters scrolled across her datapad. Deep infiltration. Enemy installation. Hostile environment. Standard threat assessment. No equipment list. No suggested LOADOUT. Just environmental data. Atmospheric composition. Structural materials common to target facility. Local temperature ranges. Gravity differential from standard. At the bottom. A single line from Varek. No constraints. Show us what you actually do. Maya smiled. Not the polite version she used for diplomacy, or the tight version that preceded violence. The genuine article, rare and brief. She pulled up installation schematics, noting ventilation systems, support structures, and what the Coalition database clinically labeled as architectural features. Her fingers moved across the datapad, cataloging possibilities invisible to anyone who saw buildings as fixed entities rather than resource deposits. The facility used aluminum magnesium alloy for load-bearing walls. Excellent thermal conductivity. Low melting point relative to titanium. Could be shaped with sufficient heat and pressure, or potentially dissolved given the right chemical catalyst. The ventilation system carried moisture. Atmospheric processing for the Kravathi garrison's respiratory requirements. Water plus aluminum created hydrogen and aluminum hydroxide. Exothermic reaction. Useful. Electrical conduits ran through walls. Standard construction. Copper wiring. Insulated casing. Strip the insulation. You had conductive material. Coil it properly. Run current through it. You generated magnetic fields. Magnetic fields plus metallic projectiles equaled kinetic solutions to biological problems. The installation's foundation sat on sedimentary rock. Depending on composition, might contain silicon dioxide, calcium carbonate, or iron oxides. All useful. Silicon dioxide plus carbon plus heat produce silicon carbide hard enough to cut most materials. Calcium carbonate plus heat released carbon dioxide and left calcium oxide. Mix that with water, you got calcium hydroxide. Basic chemistry. Multiple applications. She wasn't planning violence. She was reading the environment the way some species read stellar charts, identifying what existed, what it could become, and how to navigate from one state to another. Her communicator chimed. Varek's face appeared, wearing his standard expression of braced anticipation. You read the new protocols? I did, Maya confirmed. And whoever wrote them finally understands the assignment. She glanced at her notes, at the building schematic that had transformed from architecture into possibility. Tell command I'll need 48 hours for reconnaissance. To gather intelligence? To identify which walls are most useful. Maya shut down the datapad, already running calculations for approach vectors and material acquisition priorities. Everything else I'll figure out on site. That's what they're afraid of, Varek muttered. That's what they're counting on, Maya corrected. They finally stopped asking us to be worse versions of everyone else. She looked at the blade on her desk, product of boredom and bureaucracy, and the fundamental human inability to see objects as anything other than potential. Now they get to learn what we're actually good at. Varek ended the transmission, leaving Maya alone with schematics and possibilities and the quiet satisfaction of finally being deployed as designed, not by coalition specifications, but by 3 million years of evolution that insisted everything was a tool if you thought about it correctly. The installation waited solid, structural, and blissfully unaware that somewhere in the cosmos, a human was converting it into a shopping list. The Cravathi installation sat on designation Theta 7 like a gray carbuncle, all sharp angles and reinforced paranoia, designed to withstand assault from orbit, siege tactics, and every conventional warfare scenario their military architects could imagine. Nobody had designed it to withstand someone who saw it as a business hardware store. Maya spent the first 12 hours in observation position, 3 kilometers out, recording traffic patterns and guard rotations with the patient thoroughness of someone who understood that rushing got you killed. The installation's designers had been thorough. Overlapping sensor fields, redundant security protocols, kill zones covering every approach vector. Beautiful work, really, if you were planning to attack it like a normal person. Maya wasn't planning to attack it like a normal person. She pulled up her datapad, cross-referencing structural scans with material databases. The walls were definitely aluminum-magnesium alloy, exactly as Coalition intelligence had reported. The foundation showed traces of limestone calcium carbonate. Perfect. Ventilation shafts vented atmospheric processors every 6 hours. Moisture content in exhaust, 47%. Higher than expected. Better than expected. She tapped notes into her pad. Each observation another piece of an increasingly interesting puzzle. Guard patrols followed predictable patterns. Standard Cravathi military doctrine, efficient, disciplined, utterly convinced that following established protocols meant security. They'd never encountered someone who used protocols as targeting data. At hour 18, Maya moved. Not toward the installation, but to a geological survey site 2 kilometers northwest. Coalition science teams had drilled core samples 5 years ago, abandoned the site when mineral yields proved commercially unviable. She wasn't interested in commercial viability. The abandoned drilling equipment sat rusting in the pale. Moonlight servos seized. Power cells depleted. Everything the Coalition had deemed too expensive to retrieve. Maya circled the machinery like a prospector evaluating a claim. Hydraulic lines, synthetic rubber, degraded but salvageable. Drill bits, diamond-tipped, dull but still harder than most materials. Power cell housing, empty, but the superconductor coils inside remained intact. Structural frame, titanium alloy, weathered but sound. She began disassembly with the methodical focus of a surgeon, using her multi-tool and a piece of broken drilling shaft as improvised leverage. Each component got evaluated, categorized, either packed into her field bag or set aside for later retrieval. The superconductor coils alone were worth the trip. Run current through them. Create an electromagnetic field strong enough to accelerate metallic projectiles to deeply unfortunate velocities. The Coalition called it mass driver technology. Humans called it a railgun. The principle was the same. By hour 24. She'd stripped everything useful from the drilling site and moved to phase 2. Material collection. The limestone deposits ran along the installation's northern perimeter, exactly where Geological Survey said they would. Maya collected approximately 10 kilograms of the chalky white stone, selecting pieces based on grain structure and purity. Calcium carbonate. Heat it to 900 Celsius. It decomposed into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Mix calcium oxide with water. You got calcium hydroxide, caustic, corrosive, and extraordinarily useful for someone who needed to convince reinforced doors. They weren't as reinforced as they thought. She also collected carbon. Not difficult on a planet with vegetation. Burn wood in low oxygen, you got charcoal. Charcoal plus calcium oxide plus heat equaled calcium carbide. Calcium carbide plus water produced acetylene gas. Acetylene burned at over 3000 Celsius, hot enough to cut through aluminum magnesium, alloy like butter. Maya worked through the night, building a workshop in a shallow ravine that provided visual cover from the installation's sensors. No fire heat signatures would trigger alerts. Instead, she used chemical reactions that provided warmth without visible flame. A mixture of calcium chloride and water generated exothermic heat. She'd brought the calcium chloride in her ration packs, standard issue water purification tablets. Everything had multiple uses if you thought about it correctly. By hour 36, she'd processed her materials. Calcium oxide sealed in waterproof containers made from her own ration packaging. Charcoal crushed to fine powder. Superconductor coils carefully cleaned and tested. A collection of metallic fragments from the drilling site, future projectiles. Currently just scrap metal. The installation's walls had been studied, analyzed. Understood. Now came the interesting part. Maya pulled up schematics again. This time, overlaying her material inventory with tactical possibilities. The ventilation system's moisture output meant the atmospheric processors ran hot lots of waste heat venting into ductwork. Metal ductwork. Excellent conductors. She could work with that. The security sensors covered approaches, but they assumed threats came from outside. Nobody had considered someone who planned to make the building attack itself. Guard rotation changed at hour 42. A brief window when new shift reported an old shift. Departed 3 minutes of overlap where attention divided and protocols got sloppy. Not much, but enough. Maya moved during that window, covering 2 kilometers of broken terrain in 17 minutes. Not toward the main entrance. Toward the waste reclamation system on the installation's eastern side. Every fortress had to deal with waste. The Krevifi were fastidious about it. Automated systems, sealed conduits, everything vented to processing plants 500 meters from the main structure. Also convenient. Waste conduits were considered low priority for sensor coverage. After all, who infiltrated through sewage? Someone who understood that dignity was negotiable and success wasn't. Maya reached the waste systems. Exterior access point, a reinforced hatch designed to resist unauthorized entry. Standard coalition locking mechanism. Electromagnetic seal powered by local generator. She pulled out her superconductor coils, connected them to capacitors she'd built from salvaged power cells, and created a localized electromagnetic pulse focused on the lock's control circuit. The seal clicked open. Not forced. Convinced it had received proper authorization. Maya smiled in the darkness and climbed inside. The galaxy had spent decades teaching humans what tools were for, never quite grasping that humans had spent 3 million years teaching themselves what everything could become. The installation's builders had created something strong, secure, and thoroughly predictable. Maya had just turned it into raw materials, and she was only getting started. The waste reclamation conduit smelled exactly as expected, which was to say, thoroughly unpleasant. Maya breathed through her mouth and kept moving, following the schematic overlays on her heads-up display. The conduit ran 30 meters before connecting to the main facility's infrastructure. At the junction point, access panels allowed maintenance to service the automated systems. Standard design. Predictable. Useful. She reached the junction in 4 minutes, carefully removed the access panel, and found herself looking at exactly what she'd hoped for: a hub where waste processing connected to the main ventilation system. Separate systems, but sharing infrastructure space. Close enough to touch, close enough to modify. Maya pulled out her first container of calcium oxide, quicklime to anyone who'd worked with construction materials. She added water from her canteen in carefully measured amounts, watching the mixture heat up as it transformed into calcium hydroxide. Slaked lime. Chemistry didn't care about species or technology level. Calcium hydroxide remained caustic whether you made it in a Earth pottery kiln or a coalition research facility. She applied them mixture to the ventilation shaft's access bolts, hardened steel designed to resist unauthorized removal. The calcium hydroxide disagreed with that assessment, beginning slow corrosive work on the metal. While chemistry did its job, Maya moved to phase 2. The ventilation shaft carried warm air from the installation's atmospheric processors. Metal ductwork, just as she'd predicted. Aluminum magnesium alloy, same as the walls. Excellent thermal conductivity. She attached her superconductor coils to the ductwork's exterior, connected them to capacitors charged by hand-cranked generators she'd built from salvaged drilling equipment motors. Simple mechanical energy converted to electrical storage. Humans have been doing it since the 1800s. The coils began generating electromagnetic fields, heating the ductwork through induction. Not quickly. She didn't need quickly. She needed precisely. By the time the access bolts' molecular structure had been sufficiently compromised by chemical corrosion, the ductwork had reached approximately 400 Celsius. Hot enough to make the aluminum magnesium alloy significantly more malleable. Maya removed the weakened bolts with her multi-tool, pulled the access panel free, and found herself looking into the installation's main ventilation system. Temperature inside, 38 Celsius. Atmospheric composition, 72% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, trace elements. Humidity, 49%. Perfect. She reached into her pack and retrieved containers of calcium carbide, produced by heating her limestone-derived calcium oxide with charcoal at over 2,000 degrees. The chemical reaction had taken hours and required careful temperature control using more improvised heating elements. Worth every minute. Maya opened the containers inside the ventilation shaft and added water. The reaction was immediate. Calcium carbide plus water equaled calcium hydroxide and acetylene gas. Lots of acetylene gas. Acetylene was heavier than air. It would sink, flowing through the ventilation system, accumulating in low points and enclosed spaces. Flammable, highly flammable. Explosive at concentrations between 2 and 80%. She wasn't planning to explode anything. She was planning to convince the installation's automated safety systems that they had a gas leak. Emergency. Maya pulled out the last piece of her improvised toolkit, a spark generator, built from piezoelectric elements salvaged from the drilling site's pressure sensors. Click the trigger. Generate a spark. She placed it in the ventilation shaft, 20 meters downstream from her position, attached to a timer made from her datapads, alarm function, and some creative wiring. Then she climbed back into the waste conduit and moved to position 2. The installation had 17 separate ventilation zones. She'd studied the schematics until she could navigate them blind. Each zone had its own atmospheric processors, its own ductwork, its own safety sensors, its own vulnerabilities. Maya spent The next 6 hours moving through the installation's infrastructure like a ghost, never entering the main facility, always staying in the spaces between maintenance corridors, utility shafts, structural voids that architects included for practical reasons and forgot about immediately after. Each ventilation zone received the same treatment: calcium carbide plus water, acetylene accumulation, delayed ignition sources, positioned with careful precision. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. The acetylene concentrations she was creating would trigger safety sensors long before reaching dangerous levels. The spark generators would activate after she was clear, creating brief flames that would be immediately suppressed by automated fire systems. No casualties. No permanent damage. Just 17 simultaneous gas leak emergencies. That would force complete facility evacuation, while automated systems dealt with perceived threats. By hour 54, Maya had finished her preparation and withdrawn to her observation position 3 kilometers out. Her datapad showed countdown timers for each spark generator, synchronized, precise. She pulled up the installation's emergency protocols, publicly available information because coalition safety regulations required transparent evacuation procedures. Gas leak detection triggered automatic alerts. Command staff had 60 seconds to verify or override. After 60 seconds, automated evacuation began. All personnel to designated assembly points. No exceptions. The Crevathi were efficient. They'd follow protocols exactly, which was the whole point. Maya watched the timers count down. 3, 2, 1. Through her observation scope, she saw lights change. Alarm systems activated. The installation's exterior speakers began broadcasting evacuation instructions in Crevathi, Coalition Standard, and 4 other common languages. Doors opened. Personnel emerged in orderly lines, moving to assembly points with disciplined precision. No panic, no chaos. Just professional military evacuation, exactly as trained. Maya counted heads. 143 personnel. All accounted for. All safe. She waited until the last Crevathi cleared the building. Until emergency response teams began preliminary investigation with atmospheric sensors and thermal scanners. Then she moved, not toward the evacuated installation, that would come later, toward the communications array on the ridge overlooking the facility. The array was unmanned, automated, and currently very busy transmitting emergency reports to Crevathi Command. So busy that nobody noticed one additional transmission piggybacking on the outgoing data stream. Maya's message was brief. Encrypted with coalition codes she'd been given for exactly this purpose, and directed to Admiral Kethrian, a coalition tactical command. Installation evacuated. No casualties. Ready for Phase 3. Awaiting pickup authorization. She'd been sent to gather intelligence on Crevathi military capabilities. The coalition needed to understand their manufacturing infrastructure, their supply networks, their operational readiness. Maya had done that. Her reconnaissance had cataloged everything: facility layout, guard rotations, security systems, material composition, structural vulnerabilities, all without firing a shot, all without standard equipment, all by understanding that buildings were just collections of resources waiting to be rearranged. She settled into her observation position and waited for extraction, watching Crevathi emergency teams investigate their mysteriously malfunctioning but ultimately harmless facility. Somewhere in Coalition Command, Admiral Kethrian was probably reading her report. Somewhere in Coalition Command, someone was learning what happened when you stopped telling humans what tools they needed and started asking them what they could accomplish. Maya smiled in the darkness. The galaxy was finally catching on. Coalition Tactical Command's primary briefing amphitheater could hold 300. personnel representing 47 member species. Today, it held twice that, with overflow crowds watching via remote feed. Everyone wanted to hear about the human who'd infiltrated a fortified installation using chemistry and salvaged garbage. Admiral Catherine stood at the central podium, his chitinous plating catching the overhead lights. Behind him, a holographic display showed the Krevati installation, intact, functional, and thoroughly humiliated. Operation parameters were straightforward, Catherine began, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. Gather intelligence on Krevati military infrastructure. Assess defensive capabilities. Report findings. Standard reconnaissance protocol. The display shifted, showing Maya's mission briefing. Notably absent, equipment manifests. We provided Lieutenant Cross with environmental data, structural specifications, and objective parameters. No issued equipment. No required loadout. Catherine paused, letting that sink in. The response from disassembly was skeptical. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several species translators struggled with the Valkyrie equivalent of "I told you so." Lieutenant Cross completed the mission in 61 hours. 0 casualties. 0 permanent damage to target facility. Complete intelligence package delivered with tactical precision that our planning algorithms couldn't have predicted because our planning algorithms don't think like humans. The display changed, showing time-stamped footage from installation security feeds. Maya moving through waste conduits. Maya modifying ventilation systems. Maya converting architectural features into chemical laboratories. She used materials found on site. Abandoned mining equipment. Geological deposits. The facility's own infrastructure. Catherine's mandibles clicked with something that might have been admiration or horror or both. She created calcium oxide from limestone, synthesized acetylene gas from industrial compounds, and convinced the installation's own safety systems to evacuate the building without ever confronting a single guard. Dr. Tyven stood from her seat in the research section. "Admiral, permission to present analysis?" Catherine gestured assent. The xenanthropologist approached the podium, her wings fluttering with barely contained excitement. "We've spent 73 years trying to integrate humans into coalition operational frameworks. We designed equipment protocols assuming they needed our tools to function at stellar-level capability." She pulled up comparison data. "We were wrong." The display showed success rates. Human operations with standard equipment versus improvised resources. The improvised column consistently outperformed. "Humans don't need our tools," Dr. Tyven continued. "They need problems. Give them objectives and environmental context, and they'll create solutions from whatever exists. It's not tactical training. It's 3 million years of evolutionary adaptation." She pulled up historical data-human technological development from stone tools to spaceflight. The progression was terrifying in its relentless creativity. Every other coalition species developed technology through incremental refinement of biological advantages or inherited knowledge systems. Humans developed technology by looking at rocks and thinking, what if I hit things with this? Then they thought, what if I make the rock sharper? Then, what if I heat the rock? Then, what if I mix different rocks together? The amphitheater had gone completely silent. They bootstrapped from stone to steel to silicon through sheer determination to make everything more useful than its current state. They see potential where other species see objects. They see resources where we see infrastructure. They see solutions where we see problems. Quartermaster Velk stood, his 4 eyes fixed on the data with visible distress. "Doctor, are you suggesting we eliminate all equipment protocols for human operatives?" "I'm suggesting we've been handicapping our most adaptable asset by forcing them into frameworks designed for species that need specific tools for specific tasks. Dr. Tyven met his stare. Humans don't need specific tools. They need information and trust. And if they fail without proper equipment, Maya's voice cut through the amphitheater from the observation gallery. We won't. Every eye turned toward her. She stood at the railing, still wearing field gear, looking thoroughly unbothered by the attention of 300 coalition personnel. Failure happens when you don't understand your resources, Maya continued. You gave me mission parameters and environmental data. That's all I needed. The planet provided everything else. She descended to the main floor, approaching the podium with easy confidence. You want to know what humans need to function? We need to know what you want accomplished and what's available. Everything between those 2 points is just problem solving. Security Officer Draven stood. Lieutenant, you created chemical weapons from construction materials. I created chemical reactions from available compounds, Maya corrected. No weapons, just chemistry. Calcium carbide plus water equals acetylene. Basic industrial process. I didn't weaponize anything. I convinced safety systems they had a gas leak. You infiltrated a fortified installation through waste conduits. I used the approach vector with lowest sensor coverage. That happened to be sanitation infrastructure. Maya shrugged. Dignity is negotiable. Mission success isn't. Admiral Catherine's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Lieutenant, if we'd issued you standard infiltration equipment, active camouflage, electronic countermeasures, plasma cutters, would you have completed the mission faster? Maya considered the question with visible sincerity. Probably not. Standard equipment means standard approaches. Defenders prepare for standard approaches. My method worked because nobody prepares for someone who treats their fortress like a chemistry supply closet. So, our equipment is inferior? Your equipment is excellent for species that think about tools as fixed-function objects. It's limiting for species that think about tools as potential waiting to be redirected. The amphitheater erupted into overlapping discussions. Some species outraged, others fascinated. A few, notably the Cromoth contingent, laughing with what sounded like genuine appreciation. Catherine waited for silence, then addressed the assembly with decisive authority. New operational doctrine effective immediately. Human operatives receive mission parameters, environmental intelligence, and objective specifications. Equipment requests are advisory, not mandatory. If a human operator believes they can accomplish objectives without issued gear, they're authorized to proceed. The quartermaster made a sound of profound administrative distress. Furthermore, Catherine continued, we're establishing a new training program. Cross-species tactical adaptation. Humans will teach other coalition members alternative problem-solving methodologies. Dr. Tyven's wings fluttered with delight. You're asking humans to teach us how they think. I'm asking humans to show us what we've been missing, Catherine corrected. He looked at Maya. Lieutenant, you were assigned to training development. Effective immediately. Maya's expression suggested she'd rather infiltrate 10 more fortresses through waste conduits. Sir, I'm a field operative, not an instructor. You're someone who made a combat blade from floor plating in 5 minutes. You're someone who synthesized acetylene gas from geological deposits. You're someone who treats the galaxy like one enormous hardware store. Catherine's mandibles clicked with finality. If you can't teach us to think like that, at least help us understand why you do. The assembly watched the exchange with rapt attention. 300 coalition personnel witnessing the moment their understanding of human capability fundamentally shifted. One condition, Maya said. Catherine tilted his head. Which is, when you inevitably get reports of other humans doing things that seem impossible or stupid or both, remember this briefing. Remember, we're not breaking your rules out of ignorance or disrespect. She looked around the amphitheater. We're solving problems the only way our species knows how, by refusing to accept that anything is impossible until we've tried everything. Accepted, Catherine said immediately. Maya nodded once, sharp and professional. Then I'll teach them. But sir, they're going to hate it. Why? Because lesson 1 is everything you think you know about tools is wrong. Lesson 2 is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Lesson 3, she smiled slightly, involves bread dough and structural metallurgy. Dr. Tyven was already taking notes, her recorder working overtime. Somewhere in the back of the amphitheater, Akramath started laughing again, deep, rumbling sound that suggested he knew exactly what was coming and couldn't wait to watch. The galaxy had spent 73 years trying to civilize humanity, trying to teach them proper protocol and established methodology. Now, it was humanity's turn to teach the galaxy what they'd known for 3 million years. Everything was a tool if you thought about it correctly, and humans had gotten very, very good thinking. 3 months later, Coalition Training Facility Gamma 7 had become the galaxy's most chaotic classroom. The facility's gymnasium, designed for physical conditioning across 47 species requirements, now hosted what official records called Adaptive Tactics Seminar, and what participants called The Human is Going to Kill Us with Homework. Maya stood before 30 coalition operatives representing 15 species, holding a standard issue ration container. What is this? She asked. Food storage, answered Riloth, the young Sessic who'd witnessed the original floor plate incident. He'd volunteered for the training with enthusiastic determination that Maya found both admirable and slightly concerning. Wrong. Try again. The class exchanged confused glances. It's a container, offered a Velkari intelligence specialist. Getting warmer, but still thinking too small. Maya set the container on a table. This is food storage, water carrier, measuring cup, digging implement, signaling mirror if you polish it, cutting edge if you break it correctly, funnel, breathing apparatus for toxic atmospheres if you seal it properly, percussion instrument for communication, mold for shaping materials, and approximately 47 other things, depending on circumstances. She pulled out her multi-tool, the same one that had helped pry up a floor plate 3 months ago. This is officially a maintenance implement. Unofficially, it's leverage, cutting edge, electrical conductor, hammer, screwdriver, pry bar, weapon, measuring tool, and anything else you need badly enough to figure out. A Kromoth weapons specialist named Kroven raised one massive hand. You're saying we should treat all equipment as convertible? I'm saying you should stop thinking of equipment as having single purposes. Everything exists in multiple states of potential. Your job is recognizing which state serves your current objective. Maya pulled up holographic display showing the Kravathi installation. 3 months ago, I looked at this fortress and saw calcium carbonate deposits, aluminum magnesium alloy structural components, copper wiring, water vapor, and thermal differentials. The Kravathi saw walls, security, power grid, atmosphere, and climate control. She zoomed in on the ventilation system. Same building, completely different understanding. They saw what it was. I saw what it could become. Dr. Tyven, observing from the instructor gallery, was recording everything with visible academic euphoria. Your assignment, Maya continued, is to infiltrate this training facility's secured wing. You have 72 hours. No issued equipment except standard field gear rations, canteens, basic tools. The secured wing has biometric locks, Riloth protested. Reinforced barriers. Sensor networks. Yes, it does. Maya smiled. Figure it out. Class dismissed. The operatives filed out with expressions ranging from determination to existential dread. Croven lingered. "Lieutenant, a question?" "Go ahead." "The Crommeth military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force. Direct assault. We're not trained for this." He gestured vaguely at the ration container still sitting on the table, thinking about food storage as 47 different things. Maya studied the massive Crommeth, easily twice her mass. Armed with natural physical advantages humans couldn't match. "Your people are strong," she said. "Stronger than humans will ever be. But strength is just another resource. You can apply it through direct force, or you can apply it through mechanical advantage. A Crommeth who understands leverage is worth 10 who only know how to hit things." "You're saying we should be more like humans?" "I'm saying you should be more like yourselves, but with better imagination. Humans aren't strong, so we had to get creative. You are strong, and you're also smart. Combine those advantages instead of limiting yourself to doctrine." Croven nodded slowly, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, and left. Dr. Tyven descended from the observation gallery. "How many do you think will succeed?" "All of them, eventually. Whether they succeed in 72 hours is another question." "You're not going to help them?" "I gave them the most important help. Permission to think differently." Maya pulled up her monitoring feed showing students already beginning reconnaissance of the secured wing. Everything else is just details. The 72 hours became Masterclass in Creative Problem Solving. Riloth discovered that his cesic biology, specifically his wings' ability to generate ultrasonic frequencies, could interfere with sensor networks if he modulated the pitch correctly. Not disable them, just convince them they were experiencing calibration errors. Croven learned that his considerable mass plus a salvaged maintenance card equaled a mobile battering ram, but also learned that sometimes the better solution was using his strength to bend ventilation grating just wide enough to access ductwork. A Volcari operative named Thesic synthesized a weak acid from cleaning supplies, using it to corrode door hinges over 18 hours of patient application. When questioned why she didn't force the door, she replied, "The lieutenant said everything exists in multiple states. Metal exists in solid state and dissolved state. I just encouraged transition." They failed the first attempt, and the second, and the third. On attempt 4, they succeed, not through individual brilliance, but through combined effort using each species' advantages in unconventional ways. Maya watched the final infiltration via security feed. Dr. Tyven beside her recording every moment. "They're learning," the xenanthropologist murmured. "They're remembering," Maya corrected. "Every species developed tool use somehow. We've just forgotten that tools and resources aren't the same thing. Tools are what you make. Resources are what you have." The secured wings door opened not forced. Not hacked, but convinced through a combination of Riloth's sensor disruption, Croven's structural modification, and Nesic's chemical encouragement. "Humans spent 3 million years learning this lesson," Maya said. "The rest of the galaxy can learn it faster. They just need permission to stop thinking like they were taught and start thinking like they evolved too." 6 months after the initial floor plate incident, Admiral Kethrian released the updated operational results to Coalition Command. Human operative success rates up 12%. Coalition operative success rates in general up 8% across all species. Equipment requisition requests down 34%. Mission completion through unconventional tactics up 67%. Resource efficiency up 41%. The report included a note from Dr. Tyven. "We didn't uplift humans to our level. We were preventing them from teaching us what we'd forgotten, that intelligence isn't using the right tools. It's understanding that everything is the right tool if you apply it correctly. Attached: 17 research papers, 43 training modules, and one formal recommendation that adaptive tactics training become mandatory for all coalition operatives. Also attached: a repair bill for Depot 7's waiting area floor. The quartermaster had insisted. Maya stood in her quarters, reviewing deployment orders for her next mission. Deep space reconnaissance. Hostile environment. Minimal support infrastructure. The equipment manifest was blank, except for one line. Operative authorized to determine resource requirements. Her communicator chimed. Varek's face appeared. Thoughts on the new assignment? Maya looked at the mission parameters, at the environmental data, at the blank space where equipment lists used to be. She smiled. Looks like they're finally learning. That's what I'm afraid of, Varek muttered. Next thing you know, Valkyrie quartermasters will be requisitioning floor plates as tactical assets. They're not floor plates, Maya corrected. They're titanium composite reserves awaiting optimal application. Varek made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. I'm never going to understand how your species thinks, am I? Probably not. But you're getting better at trusting that we'll figure it out. Is that what this is? Trust? Maya considered the question, looking at her deployment orders, at the freedom they represented, at the recognition that humans didn't need to be like everyone else to be effective. They just needed to be themselves. No, she said finally. It's better than trust. It's understanding. She ended the transmission and began packing for deployment. Minimal gear. Standard field kit. Everything she didn't need because somewhere in the mission area, the galaxy had already provided everything she'd actually require. Rock became blade. Floor became weapon. Architecture became arsenal. And somewhere in Coalition Command, someone finally understood what humanity had known for 3 million years. Everything was a tool. Just had to think about it correctly. The galaxy was learning, and humanity was teaching. Not by becoming like everyone else, but by showing everyone else what they'd forgotten. That intelligence wasn't following protocol. It was seeing potential in everything and refusing to accept limitations. It was looking at rocks and thinking, I can work with this. It was the fundamental human truth that had carried them from stone tools to starships. Given enough time and literally anything, humans would figure out how to make it useful. The galaxy had tried to civilize that instinct. Now it was learning to harness it, and the cosmos would never be the same. End.